Hello, welcome back to Spellbound. I'm BJ the Book Witch, and this is my spring wrap up. So there is no rhyme or reason to the types of books on this list or the order that they appear. So let's dive into this chaos together. And we're starting with Gild by Raven Kennedy. So this was self-published on Amazon in 2020, and it is a BookTube and BookTok favorite. One note is I also did read Glint and Gleam, which are two of the sequels, and I think there's even two more beyond that, but I did not read Beyond Gleam. So this is a King Midas retelling about the king's favored, who is a woman who has been kept in a cage in the king's castle for most of her adult life. And as the story goes on, it's revealed exactly why she was caged, and that reveal was pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie. But for the majority of my reading experience of this book/series, because I did read 3 out of 4 or 5, I was really confused. Not because I didn't know what was going on, but I was confused because this book is so hyped. It is heralded as so steamy and amazing, and to be very honest, I thought that I had the wrong book for most of my reading experience. I kept going back to book talks and booktube videos that I had saved that referenced this book, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't reading the wrong one and that I should have been reading Gilded by Marissa Meyer. But no, this one is the one that's it's so sexy, it's so good, and it's Gild by Raven Kennedy. I didn't have the same reading experience, I think, as a lot of the other reviewers who have read it. Personally, I thought the plot dragged. I thought that any romance was more creepy and cringy as opposed to steamy and sexy. I thought a lot, if not all, of the women characters really lacked motivation and agency. And even though that particular aspect of independence was part of our protagonist character arc, I thought she still seemed to be behind the 8 ball when it came to her own sense of self-preservation and her ability to care about what was going on. Also, this book kind of read like a fairy tale in which the plot, which had things happen, but it happened to our characters instead of our characters really driving the story through their actions. So that also was another degree of separation from me and the story. And so I just really didn't enjoy this book or series. So I gave it 3 out of 5. And then I read Growing Vegetables by Jessica Sowards or Sowards, and was published in 2021 by Cool Springs Press, which is an imprint of Waynick Book Group. And this is a great resource for a first-time gardener because it has all of the basics of everything you need to start your first vegetable garden. So I recently installed some raised garden beds and started growing vegetables for the first time, and this book was a great resource. I read it through once entirely before the install, and then again a few weeks later as I started to settle into a routine. And this book was really great at helping cover all of the basics of everything you needed to do kind of for that first harvest cycle. The best thing about this book and others in its series is that it comes as an optional spiral bound, and I cannot express how awesome that is because that is exactly how you're going to need and use this book when you're actually outside and using it. So it was great. It did exactly what it set out to do. 5 out of 5. Blade of Secrets and Master of Iron by Tricia Levenseller. And these were both published in 2021 and 2022 respectively by Fywell and Friends, which is an imprint of Myquillyn Publishing. So Blade of Secrets and its sequel Master of Iron is a kind of Arthurian story about a bladesmith with severe social anxiety, but she's also gifted with magic, and that's why her weapons are so unique and powerful, is because she can actually imbue her weapons with different types of unique magic. So knives that never dull, swords that always reach their target, shields that can absorb and then repel their own impact, that kind of thing. But one day she accidentally whispers her own secrets into a sword, and it absorbs those secrets, and that sword has now become an undefeatable sword that there is. The most powerful weapon in all the realms. And it's also indestructible, and that it cannot be melted and it cannot be destroyed. And unfortunately, a military leader intent on conquering all 7 kingdoms wants her sword. So I love Tricia Levenseller, but with most authors that I love, I don't love all of their books. And same is true with Levenseller. So Daughter of the Pirate King is one of my favorite series of all time, and The Shadows Between Us is a jolly and murderous good time. But I wasn't obsessed with Warrior of the Wild, and I didn't really love this duology either. This duology felt like it was geared toward the younger side of YA, which was also true for the standalone Warrior of the Wild. But that being said, the writing is completely accessible and the plots do move quickly. Levenseller's really great at writing intentional dialogue, which is refreshing to see in a book that is written on the younger side. None of it is wasted. And she also does craft some really unique characters. Like her protagonist in this duology, reading about social anxiety was really interesting in a high fantasy sort of setting. I will say it was a neat story and I am glad that I read it, but they didn't become like instant favorites. So I rated them both 4 stars. The Coven by Harper L. Woods, published in 2023 to Kindle Unlimited. So this book is about a witch, one of the 13, who is invited to attend an elite and secluded adult school for witchcraft some decades after a really bad massacre affected and claimed the lives of several students and faculty. So our protagonist has several tasks here in this plot. First of all, learn to harness her magic, seek more information on the death of her mother during her mother's time at the school, uncover the truth behind the corruption of the school's faculty and like whatever shit they're up to, and finally figure out the role that the school's infuriating and very handsome headmaster like plays into everything. This one definitely gets props for having a very thorough plot that was very clearly thought out well before the book was published. This story has been written, edited, pared down, and well paced, and you can tell that the author already knows where it's going before this first book was published, which was really refreshing. It did not feel like you were reading this book alongside the author as they're thinking it up. You know, this book has been mapped out. At least, I don't know if the series has been, but this book really felt like the author already is confident in where it's going to go, and it was a very enjoyable ride. So I do hope that the series overall continues with the same level of intrigue, plot surprises, and emotional depth that this book delivered. I rated it 3.5, even though on review it might be a 4-star. And I hope the series becomes a 4-star. So I am looking forward to the sequel because I really want to know what happens next. Delilah Green Doesn't Care, published in 2022 by Berkeley, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. This is a sapphic contemporary rom-com about a jaded and cynical up-and-coming photographer in New York City who is hired to shoot her estranged stepsister's wedding back in their small hometown in Oregon. When Delilah arrives, she is met with the same animosity and coldness from her stepfamily that she experienced all throughout her childhood, and an unexpected warmth from her stepsister's best friend, Claire. Though Delilah really doesn't care about her stepsister's happiness, it is clear that her stepsister is paired with a grade A prick and is about to make a terrible decision. Uniting with her stepsister's best friends, Delilah agrees to try to sabotage the wedding before it's too late, trying not to fall in love with Claire in the process. This book is incredible, a quality rom-com start to finish. How do I love the let me count the ways. Characters, plot, writing, humor, dialogue, wit, spice, emotional depth, and Bechdel test. So Blake's characters were unique and compelling, as well as being like real and well-rounded, while each having their own very unique motivation that was evident and present in every scene. So the plot was fantastically not centered around the stepsister's wedding, but around the emotional journey that Delilah was going through being back in her hometown. So this not only gave us the emotional depth that we needed to root for such a cynical protagonist, but also helped us see every other character in a completely different light than what is being presented in present day on the page. So a fantastic use of simultaneous plot and character development through the use of these flashbacks. I'm not sure which one is more well done in this book, the humor or the spice, because the humor is quick-witted and it really adds a charm to our protagonist's cynicism and like jadedness that is really needed, but also consistently refreshing and consistently lifts the book up when it has such an anchor in kind of a childhood of sadness. So really quick-witted and well done, and it keeps you laughing and chuckling throughout. But also the spice is next level. I mean, this is a sapphic romance written by a woman, and you're not going to have any technical spice that is better than that. Blake's use of spice after laying the groundwork through such an emotional foundation, an emotionally deep foundation, really helps the spice take center stage and gives it so much more meaning and tension when it finally does. But honestly, the very best part about this book is that the one man character is such a nothing character and a plot device that he has like maybe 6 lines total. The entire book is women led and he is nothing but a prop, and the book is better for it. This might actually be the only contemporary rom-com that I've ever rated 5 stars. I loved this book. And Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, also by Ashley Herring Blake, published in 2023 by Berkley, an imprint of Penguin Random House. So this is the sequel to Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and this follows Delilah's stepsister Astrid Parker about 9 months or so, I think, after the events of the first book. So this one focuses on Astrid, obviously, as she is the lead interior designer on a reality TV program that's focused this episode on renovating an inn in their small town, like a famous inn. She encounters some really strong design rivalry from the project's lead carpenter, who also happens to be the granddaughter of the inn's owner. The hardest part is that their growing animosity and rivalry towards each other design-wise only increases their mutual attraction toward each other. So this has all of the same quick-witted charm and same lovable, compelling characters as the first book. But I didn't feel that this book had the same emotional anchor that Delilah Green had. So the emotional anchors of this book fluctuate between Astrid's relationship with her mom, Astrid's lack of identity, and Astrid's relationship with her own sexuality, and also the relationship with the love interest. While these are all really strong and relevant components, I don't think that the book dived deeply enough into any one of these for the turning points of these to have the significance that they needed. All of these are all plot leading emotional anchors. So to waffle between the three felt like we didn't get the same depth that we got in Delilah Green, and therefore the same emotional anchor that Delilah Green carried with ease. But for that, it was still a very enjoyable book with great writing, excellent dialogue, and an incredibly spicy sapphic romance, and I rated it 4 stars. Cursed Princess Club by LambCat. This was published in 2023 by Webtoon Unscrolled. This is a hilarious graphic novel about a princess, Gwendolyn, who is by all counts ugly and awkward, which is weird because both of her sisters are beautiful and charming. And so when the king arranges for all 3 of these sisters to meet a family of brothers, princes from a nearby kingdom, to see if they're fit to marry, the princesses pull out all the stops to be charming and alluring. But then Gwendolyn hears the youngest prince reject her, and she starts to wonder if maybe that invitation that she got to join the secret group of cursed princesses who meet in the woods and live by their own rules isn't worth considering and might actually be a better fit for her. This is such a cute story with beautiful illustrations, but also it is hysterically funny. This book had me laughing out loud from beginning to end, and I was constantly coming up to Brett asking to read him passages or show him panels, because it was just so funny. It's delightful. I loved it, rated it 5 stars, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out in July. The Family Plot by Megan Collins. This was published in 2021 by Atria Books, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. So this thriller is about a woman and her siblings who were raised in a very creepy home on a secluded island that was plagued by a serial killer while they were growing up. And they were raised by their mom, who was obsessed with true crime. So this follows Delilah Lighthouse, our protagonist, as she and her siblings return home after their father's death. She has avoided home for many years, ever since the disappearance of her twin brother when she was 16. So each member of the family starts acting increasingly strange as she tries to piece together her own memories of her childhood and also details that she can get from, like, clues that her brother left behind about what may have happened to her brother. So this book had some interesting commentary on, like, the voyeurism of true crime enthusiasts or fanatics, and I found that really interesting. But at the same time, this book read like true crime. So I feel like if I liked true crime more or at all, because I don't really care for true crime, then I feel like I really would have enjoyed this book a lot more than I did. Because I personally gave it 3 stars, but I do think that someone else who enjoys true crime might have rated it higher, which I thought was kind of ironic considering the book's positioning on it. Cozy Minimalist Home by Myquillyn Smith. This was published in 2018 by Zondervan, an evangelical Christian publishing house. I promise that I am not seeking these books out just to trash them. I legitimately was bamboozled. I thought that this book would be like a Marie Kondo type of anti-capitalism, anarchy, you don't need that much stuff type of book, but with a focus on interior design in dealing with having less stuff. But it wasn't. Honestly, you should read some of the 1 and 2 star reviews on Goodreads, basically any of the reviews that are not obviously by friends of the author. They are scathing, but very true. This entire book felt like that very long and personal story that you didn't ask for, but that you have to scroll through anyway before you get to the recipe that you Googled. For a book on minimalism, this book had so many words that said absolutely nothing, and it contradicted itself in every chapter. First chapter, don't label your style. It's limiting. It's going to hinder your creativity. Second chapter, finally, I had a name for exactly my style, and it's cozy minimalism. We're called cozies, cosmies for short, comies for short. And then the rest of the book literally outlines the comey way of doing things. The book incorrectly defines and expresses the idea of hygge, is extremely condescending and dismissive of alternative design styles like feng shui, and then also like weirdly brings up and talks about God and all of these different ways and how God specifically had a hand in her interior design choices. It's so dumb. The whole book was such a mess, but my personal favorite part was the end of the book when she includes her before and after pictures, which by all counts are exactly the same. And I had to study them for literal minutes because they're not labeled and figure out which one was the before and which one was the after. I was in that moment, Andy, as she was trying to determine the difference between those 2 identical cerulean belts. This was an absolute 1-star book. This book just gave me the hiccups. Anyway, it was the biggest waste of time in a long time. Haus Magick by Erica Feldmann. This was published in 2019 by Harper 1, an imprint of HarperCollins. So I have read this one before, but I was so annoyed by whatever the Christian cozy home was trying to evangelize that I decided to pick it up again. So this book is actually exactly what I was looking for the first time, which is a focus on home design and decorating with intention. It's simple, it's not wordy or confusing, and it offers suggestions and examples instead of being prescriptive. So this book is written by the owner of Haus Magick, which is my favorite store in all of Salem, Massachusetts, but it is a home design store that focuses on intentional decor, some cleaning and intention setting products, and lots of literature. What I love most about this book is that it's not prescriptive. It doesn't say this is the style and here is what you need to do to accomplish it. It just breaks down intentional home design into 6 main elements of concepts that you might want to incorporate into your home: manifestation, clearing, protection, comfort, harmony, and balance. And then it has some suggestions, examples, ideas, and even some rituals and products and sprays and decor that go along with each element. So it says a lot in a few words and pages instead of nothing at all in so many pages. And it does all of this without gatekeeping and without aligning to one particular aesthetic. I love it, and I rated it 5 out of 5. The 13 Clocks by James Thurber. This was originally published in 1950 by Simon & Schuster. This is a delightful fairy tale novella that I picked up because I saw that it was blurbed by Neil Gaiman, who I believe is one of the most brilliant writers that we have alive today. But it's about a wicked duke who believes that he has killed time, a beautiful princess who believes that she's out of time, and a prince in disguise who has to outsmart time, and also a mysterious Golux creature in order to bring everyone their happily ever after. I loved it, and I rated it 5 stars. Dark Waters by Katherine Arden. This was published in 2021 by G.P. Putnam's Sons Books for Young Readers, which is a mouthful of an imprint by Penguin Random House. This is the third installment of Arden's Small Spaces series, which is like a middle grade, creepy, delightfully creepy series. So the first one was about a group of middle schoolers while they were on a field trip. Their bus breaks down in a foggy corn maze full of sinister scarecrows that used to be people. The second one follows the same core group of friends when they're snowed in a haunted cabin and encounter lots of creepy and scary and violent ghosts, especially one on the other side of a mirror, and one of them gets trapped on the other side of a mirror. And this book focuses on a boat trip across a secluded lake that is home to a rumored to be home to a terrifying monster. So some really strange occurrences force the group to become shipwrecked on an island that cannot be found on any map. And on this island, they encounter the ghosts of this terrible shipwreck from long ago, and the crew's last failed attempt at battling this terrifying lake monster, which the group realizes to their horror is capable of slithering onto land. I love this series more than I loved the Goosebumps series as a kid. Like, these books are spine-tingling and extremely creepy with just the right amount of suspense. I love this series so much, and I rated this one 5 stars. Ouran High School Host Club Volume 1 by Bisco Hatori. This was published in 2003 by Viz Media. So I stumbled across this series by searching cozy anime on Hulu, and I stumbled across the show. I immediately fell in love with the anime, and when I got to the end of the first season and realized that that's all there was to the anime, I was heartbroken and crushed, and immediately got the entire manga series so that I would know how the story ended. So this is a screwball romantic comedy manga series about Haruhi, who is a scholarship student at an incredibly wealthy academy. One day she stumbles into Music Room 3 and accidentally breaks an $80,000 vase. Then she discovers that the room is actually being occupied by the Ouran Host Club, a group of 6 ultra-wealthy guys with too much time on their hands as they entertain ultra-wealthy girls with too much time on their hands. And that's a direct quote from the series. So Haruhi is a girl but can be passed as a boy, and so to pay off her debt to the host club for this stupidly fancy vase, she is trained to, and she pretends to be a boy and is trained to be a host to entertain and flirt with the clients and other students that come into the club. It is hard to describe just how stupidly funny this series is, but it really is. It's self-aware, it's silly and over the top, it's absurdist in its humor, being like a little bit romantic, but most of all, it has a lot of heart and really, really rich character development in every single episode or chapter. So I really had a good time with this first book in the series. I've already started the second, and I rated the first one 4.5 stars. And finally, Bone Crier's Moon and Bone Crier's Dawn by Katherine Purdie. The first was published in 2020 by Katherine Teagan Books, an imprint of HarperCollins. This is a YA fantasy about 2 bone criers as they complete their rites of passage to each become a loress, or a farrier of souls. So our story follows 2 protagonists, one who is abducted by a band of bone crier hunters during a botched rite of passage ritual, and the other is her best friend as she pieces together clues as to why the ritual failed in the first place and what all of that has to do with the lore of her own sacred group, her untrustworthy sacred group's leader, a pact with the devil, and the fate of the undead souls as they swarm the living. So this is a very dark and compelling world that Purdie has built, and such attention to detail has been paid with regard to the lore and magic system in this story. So it was really captivating and really cool to read about. Unfortunately, though, it feels like all of the effort did go into the lore and backstory and magic system, and not as much effort or attention was paid to the characters and their emotional weight and journey, especially in regard to their relationships with each other. They all went on heavy journeys themselves, and you can see their character arcs very clearly, but as they relate to each other in real time on the page, it felt kind of disjointed. So I think for those who really like this book will really enjoy the story and premise, which gets 2 thumbs up from me. But for those who are there for the enemies to lovers premise or the relationship building and the sisterhood vibes, they might find that this one falls short. So I rated both of them 3.5 stars, rounding them both up to 4. So those are most of the books that I've read throughout spring, but now I would really love to hear from you. So what have you been reading? What have you been loving? And what do you recommend that I check out next? And then if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you loved it, hit subscribe. And of course, there's always Instagram. But take care and happy reading.